You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Elissa Sloan on the show with me today. She has an amazing new book. It's called The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. And I tell you what, with 2020 being the way that it is, Elissa, what a poignant look at celebrity and all of the stuff that we're kind of peeling the layers back on now. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Elissa, we begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
I think that would have to be in elementary school when I was given a computer. Well, actually, I was not given a computer. I was given the permission to use my father's computer. And I started writing stories as soon as I learned how to type.
Were you a bookish kid? Were you a kid that hides in the corner of the room with her book and just content?
Yes, I would eat with my books. I would read all the time. Babysitter's Club was a huge one for me.
I love it. So do you remember what the first book, or maybe a series, or maybe it was an author that just completely transported you to another place? Do you remember what that first story was that did that for you?
It's kind of funny, but I think it's actually a comic.
Okay.
So, my dad would put me on his lap when I was really little, and he would read the funny papers to me. And I remember Hagar the Horrible.
Oh, I love that strip.
Yeah, and it just it made me think about a totally different time because it was like a caveman.
That's amazing. That is so cool. So, Elissa, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Houston, Texas. Gotcha.
And your parents, tell me a little bit about the way you were raised and who these people were that brought you up in their house.
Well, my mother is a Japanese immigrant. She came to the U.S. when she was around 19. For the first time, she was 19, and she did a foreign exchange program, which is how she met my dad. He was a high schooler in Minnesota. And that sounds salacious, but no. I believe they were both seniors. It was just that she was held back a year or something because of the program. But they met, and my dad fell in love with her, and she went back to Japan, and he followed her there for like 8 years. Like every summer he would go and ask her to marry him, and she'd be like, I'm not sure if I want to have a, intercontinental marriage and children growing up in the US and all this stuff. So he finally convinced her. They got married in 1980 in New York. And soon after, my dad got a job in Houston. And so they moved to Houston, where they had my sister, and then they had me. And they've been really supportive. My dad is a photographer, hobbyist photographer. And so when I wanted to become a photographer for my profession, he was really supportive. And usually you hear about, Asian children who are told that they have to be a lawyer or a doctor. And I was told that I should be a lawyer or a doctor, but I was not forced to be either of those things, thank goodness. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Um, well, that was a good stopping point, I think.
So you said that you had this desire to be a professional photographer. What was it initially that piqued your interest in, what is it about photography that is so fascinating to you?
Well, like I said, my father was a photographer, or is a photographer, and he always showed me his negatives, and it was just so cool to see the opposite of what was being printed.
True.
um, and so when my high school offered a darkroom photography classes, I jumped on that, and I went to a really prestigious high school in Houston that is basically the movie Fame. It was it's like the movie Fame
Oh
where
yeah,
all these like
yeah.
art, yeah, it's the high school for the performing and visual arts. And so I was in the visual arts department and I focused on photography there. And I didn't think I could make a career out of it. And so I went to UT Austin and studied history, got a degree in history, and turns out that I couldn't really do much with that, uh, especially graduating in the recession in 2008.
Oh, I can
So,
only imagine.
yeah, it was not great. So I ended up working for the state of Texas, and while I was working there, I realized that I wanted to become a wedding photographer and started my own business. And there it goes.
Yes. You mentioned, those negatives.
Hmm.
When you're dealing with film photography and actually having negative prints, and then that you can then do reprints and all of that good stuff. And as a kid, from the 70s and 80s, I remember, taking film and dropping it off to get processed, and then you would get a pack of prints, and you would also have a little strip of negatives that you would, get with those. And that's something that's really lost in the day and age of digital photography. How does it, and this is kind of a side tangent, but I find it fascinating that how is digital photography affecting that whole art form of photography, and the how you see images and how you manipulate them and all of that.
Ooh, good question. I think that it's accelerated the way that people learn how to use photography, how to use their cameras, and just how to manipulate light because you can see immediately what you're working on.
Yeah.
So, you get immediate feedback and you can correct. And that's pretty much how I learned how to use off-camera flash is because I never learned how to use studio lighting when I was in high school. And it was more um, self-taught when I started shooting weddings because you can't just shoot in a dark room where everyone's dancing. You have to have some sort of artificial lighting as well.
So, Elisa, as someone who studied history, got a degree, and also photography, when did writing come into your life, and when did the storytelling bug? We know you were a bookish kid and you love stories, and but when did you start having the desire, like, oh, maybe there's a story inside me that needs to come out?
Well, when I was in fifth grade, I wrote a book, but it never got published, even though I dreamed that it would become published. It was pretty good for a fifth grader, I think. Like 200 word perfect pages long, if you remember
Wow.
word perfect.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Before Microsoft Word like drowned it out. Um, and again, my parents were really supportive. My dad hired a college student to help me revise it. But of course, that didn't really go anywhere after it was revised.
What was that story about?
Um, It was about an immigrant kid who comes to a new school and he becomes enemies with another girl who is kind of like the queen of the playground. And so they have their own warring factions during recess.
Love that. I love that, by the way. Please tell me there's hope that that'll be resurrected one day.
I have no idea where it went. I lost it.
Oh, no.
It's gone. Knowing my dad, he probably has a copy of it somewhere because he saves every hard drive that he ever owned. So it might be somewhere just inaccessible because, drives are
right.
The technology to access drives has become obsolete.
Yeah. So, history major, and you start working for the state of Texas, and then you decide to be a wedding photographer. When did this idea for this story start percolating inside you?
Oh, so I've always been kind of a gossip hound for celebrity gossip.
Yeah.
And I would read tabloids and stuff. Total trash, but it's my guilty pleasure. I don't drink, I don't smoke. So that's like the thing that I do.
No judgment here, Elissa. No judgment.
So in 2014, I was watching Spice World, the Spice Girls movie.
Yeah.
And, it came out in 1997 when the Spice Girls were at their peak. And it was 2014, and Mel B was going through this really horrible divorce. And it was public everywhere. So it was in all the tabloids. And I was thinking, like, how interesting it was that Mel B had, like, two different faces from two different times. Like, she was on top of the world in 1997, and she was going through this horrible public private battle. It was a private battle that was publicized in 2014. And so I started thinking about what would happen if there was a girl group from the 2000s that peaked then and petered out, and then something happened to one of the members in present day. And I was like, what could be the worst thing to happen? And of course, someone dying would be pretty bad. So that's where the seed came from.
So when you start having this idea and because a lot of us daydream about, and kind of play the what if scenarios in our head. But there's a special kind of person that takes these private thoughts and these ponderings and the what ifs and write them down and see if there's a story that can take shape from there. What was, when did you realize, I might be onto something? This may be something that I could pursue.
That very day, I watched the movie and I thought about it, and I was like, and I was in the shower and thinking about just everything that I just mentioned. And the first line of the book popped into my head. And it's like, the day that Cassidy died, the rest of us were in London. I was like, this is a pretty good first line. So I got out of the shower and I started writing, and like the whole first scene came to me as I was writing. And to be honest, the first 4 chapters, which is the prologue, has not changed very much since the moment that I wrote it down. So I revised a lot of the book, but I did not revise much of the prologue.
Wow. Noveler is the best way to write a novel. Why? Quite simply because we've made it the easiest place to do it. Writing a novel is hard enough. Noveler takes care of all the logistical bits of writing a novel, just leaving that small matter of the words to you. It's a clean, beautiful writing interface with writing analytics, goals and streaks, advanced grammar checking, version control, day, evening, and night modes, and many other features designed to take all the stress out of writing. Tell us what you need and we'll build it. Together, we'll build a better tool. With a design-led approach, all the right tools that you need, Noveler saves all your words constantly, allows you to manage and order your novel easily. It's accessible from any device, desktop or mobile. It syncs to Google Drive and Dropbox. It allows exports in various formats, including ebook and more. It also has nice touches like allowing you to write both offline and online, unique for a web-based platform. Everyone needs help with their writing, from inspiration through to grammar checking, so we're doing our best to provide that support. We integrate that support directly into Noveler. Our advanced grammar checker powered by Pro Writing Aid does everything from spell check to style advice. Our writing courses include the incredible Tim Clare's Couch to ADK. We're really excited to offer all Author Stories listeners 30% off Noveler for a whole year. And it doesn't matter if you choose to sign up for the monthly or annual plan. You'll get 30% off. All you need to do is use the discount code HANK when you sign up. Noveler, Novlr. That's noveler.org.
So as you start writing down your initial thoughts of the book, did this whole story start taking shape? Out of that question, can I just say, there are a couple of different camps that writers like to put themselves in, either the pantser camp or the plotter camp, where, one, you're writing by the seat of your pants as you go through the story. The other, you plot out ahead of time. Did you know where this story was going when it all started coming together for you?
I think I'm a planter, so I plotted
that.
out. Yeah, I plotted out the big marks that I wanted to hit. And I thought I knew where I wanted to hit everything. But as I wrote, I realized that it was going in a totally different direction. And I just went with it. So I think I needed those goalposts in order to start writing, but I don't think they were 100% necessary. I think they were just there to help me get from one part of the book to the next.
Gotcha. And I love that idea too. And I think more writers are, sort of a hybrid than just these two, kind of dyed in the wool camps. I think people are more fluid than maybe they want to admit when it comes to that. But tell us, who is Cassidy Holmes? And I know that kind of what was the instigation for this thought process that you were having, and describe Cassidy Holmes to us. And as you started thinking more about this, did she start growing and taking on a personality all her own?
Yeah. So initially, Cassidy was going to be kind of the meek one of the group.
Yeah.
She was the one who took direction and did everything that she was told. And basically, she didn't have much of a personality. And she was just there because being a part of this group, Gloss, would help her realize her dream of singing professionally. So she was going to do everything that she was told to do, and that was it. And I realized as I was writing it that, like, I was dealing with some mental problems of my own. I was going through some really bad depression, and Cassidy was my outlet, I guess. And so I started giving her a little bit more of my personality, and I don't know, it was just...
That's kind of the ultimate expression of empathy for a writer, isn't it? As readers, we think about, we can all put our hands on a book that affected us deeply, helped us through a time, or maybe the characters were just commiserated with us in whatever we were going through. And I think a lot of times we don't think about that the writer must have been dealing with a lot of these things for that empathy to come over to the reader so strongly. There has to be a connection with the writer. Do you think so?
Definitely. Thank you for saying that too.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Oh, well, thank you. the character of Cassidy, we've seen this play out, this type of scenario play out with celebrities through the years and in tabloids and on the internet, and where we see this person just spiraling out of control, and any one of us in our normal lives would be like, just step off the roller coaster, step off the merry-go-round, and get control. But what you so deftly bring out in the story is that all the trappings, it's almost a ride that she can't get off. How do you inhabit the mind of this person who's spiraling out of control?
What a question. How do I?
Like when you were writing, how did you put yourself in her shoes and kind of, almost become this character that's coming apart while when the rest of the characters in the book can see what's going on?
I just looked at what was going on in the world and saw that these performers didn't really have much of a choice. They were locked into contracts. They were just stuck,
Yeah.
And she's also stuck in her own mind. She doesn't think that there's a way out either. So she just keeps going. And it is worse and worse on her mental health.
There were times in this book that were reminiscent of like when Britney Spears went through that very public meltdown and shaved her head, and the whole world is watching, and we're all going like, what's going on with Britney, what did you draw on real life scenarios when you're crafting the story?
Yes, but I don't want to spoil anything for readers, so I'm not going to say what inspired a few things.
Gotcha.
I want them to find it for themselves.
Absolutely. You tell the story from different perspectives, and we get this unique look at what's going on from different angles, different perspectives through different characters' eyes, if you will. How difficult was that to kind of take all of the narrative threads and weave them together into one cohesive story?
It was surprisingly easy. I don't know how or why. It was like I was possessed. But I could, as I was steeping through this story, because it took me 5 years to write. So maybe the first year, their voices weren't very clear to me. But as I kept thinking about it, the more their personalities started to come out, and the more they seemed like real people to me. So it seemed easier to start writing them as they were, and to like really emphasize all of their little character traits, like Mary is a little bit flashy, and Yumi is a little bit more subdued, and Rose is just a bitch,
Oh man. You said that it took you 5 years to write it. Did it take you 5 years to get from beginning to end, or was this lots of revision? What was the writing process for this book like for you?
It took me something like 3 years to write the first draft. And then I reread it and realized what was wrong with it. And there was a lot wrong with it. A lot. In fact, the whole second half had to be rewritten. So around year 3, I cut off the second half and started rewriting from that area. And it took another year to finish that half. And then I just revised the whole thing for the next year until I thought, oh, this is probably as far as I can take it without professional help. And I have to say, I didn't have beta readers until the very end. I didn't have critique partners. I feel like that was a mistake. I probably should have had other eyes on it, but I was working on it so secretly that even my husband didn't know that I was working on this book until I told him I had a book deal.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, I probably would not do that again. I think I would have more eyes on my next book earlier on so that I could get feedback. Because everything I found out about the book, I would have probably figured out. Well, I found out eventually, but I probably would have learned a lot faster if someone with fresh eyes had been looking at it. So,
well, that's another camp that writers tend to put themselves in. One, some people will have beta readers, from the first sentence, it seems like, and they have just constant input on this book. And then some writers, you probably met some of them, get paralyzed because they never just break away and go write because they're just constantly worried what other people are going to think. And then, you wind up writing by committee, and that's no good, obviously. But the other side of that is, like you said, where you kind of sit over here all by yourself, and some simple input from some people may have put you on a different path. But do you, I know you said that next time will be different, but do you regret the way that you went about writing this book? And if you could go back and change the past, not that you can, would you change the process that you used?
Probably not, because I'm happy with the result of what it ended up being. And if I had used someone beforehand to critique, I probably would have gone in a slightly different direction based on their criticisms, I guess.
Sure.
So it is what it is. I'm happy with the result right now, and I do think that if I had helped, or if I had someone help me earlier, that I would have finished quicker, but I don't know if the result would have been the same. So
Sure. Well, what's really interesting about reading a book like this now, because 2020 is a weird year. I don't know if you've noticed, Elissa.
No.
Hollywood is nearly completely shut down. Live music is nearly completely shut down.
I know.
And celebrities, we can kind of laugh and poke fun at the absurdity of celebrity life. But a lot of people that work in that industry are really upended right now. And, what a fortuitous time for a book like this to come out when we are looking at the ideas of celebrity and how people make their living by entertaining other people and all of this. If you would have known ahead of time what 2020 would bring, would this have been a different book?
Probably not. I had a very specific story that I felt like I wanted to tell, and I told it. So, pandemic or not, this is what it is.
There you go. Well, The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes is available everywhere now when you're hearing this in Kindle edition or paperback or audiobook. I'm interested to see how the audiobook of this turns out, Elissa. Have you had any input on it?
I have. So they asked me for my opinion on voices. So I know that it's a full cast. Each chapter perspective that is read by a different Gloss Girl is read by a different audiobook narrator. And there is a different voice for a few smaller roles that are sprinkled throughout. So I think it's 7 voices altogether.
That's
should
fantastic.
Be good.
Yeah. So, Elissa, what are you working on now? Now that this book is out and in everyone's hands, where does your attention turn now?
Ha ha ha. It's that question, right? I'm working on something that is in the same universe, but not a sequel.
Gotcha.
I think that's all I want to say.
I love it. I can't wait to see what comes out. Next, The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes is available everywhere now. There's links to it in the show notes of this episode where you can find it easily. Elissa, can you tell people where they can find you online if people want to dig into all the great stuff that you do and connect with you?
Sure. Sure. Well, of course, I have an official website, which is ELISSA Sloan, SLOAN.com. And I'm on Instagram at Elissa Reid. So ELISSA Reid.
Excellent.
I'm also on Twitter, but I'm not very, very good on Twitter. So don't follow me there, please.
Twitter can be a bit of a dumpster fire sometimes. It's like, don't
All
go
the
there.
time.
If you don't know to. Yeah.
I don't know how to use it. I've been on the internet for half my life, and I still don't understand Twitter. So,
I
yeah.
dip in, and people are shouting at one another, and I just dip back out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instagram is usually where all the positive vibes are, and it's a happier place, it seems like.
And as a professional photographer, it's easier for me to share content there.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Elissa, we'll put links to all of your places where people can find you in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you so much.
Authors, I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called PubSite. PubSite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. PubSite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. PubSite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of one book or 20, or a small publisher, PubSite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. PubSite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. PubSite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting. And we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web.